Hello, this is Kristen Atkins here with Impressing Minds. Today I'm going to talk to you about the actual interview process where the social worker would come during your home study process. So you would have a big overview of the home study, and a part of the home study is the interview where they would actually come and talk to you and your spouse about wanting to foster and adopt and why you want to do that. They would inspect your home, and then they would probably sit down at the dining room table and talk to you about some things. So I'm going to go over some of the questions that may be asked, and realize that this can vary from worker to worker. It can vary from state to state, agency to agency. Basically, they want to make sure that the child is going to be in a very, very stable and safe environment when they come to your home. So I have some sample questions. In another video, I went over 12 assessment areas that they will check when they come to the home to do the home study. And so these questions all revolve around those assessment areas. So the first one, assessment, is attitudes and beliefs regarding the foster care and adoption and the issues regarding those. So what do you feel about the foster care system and the adoption? So it may sound something like this. Describe your role and responsibilities in achieving the goals of child welfare. Can you explain the difference between foster care, kinship care, and adoption? Okay, that might be one of the questions that they would ask. Here's another question. Who in your family will best understand the needs you will have with a child who has experienced trauma, demonstrates behavioral problems, or experiences many developmental delays? So who in the family is going to be most responsible and understanding when these things and these situations occur? Another thing they're going to ask, tell me about a time when you were obliged to return something you valued. How did you feel? What coping strategies did you use to manage your feelings? So this question is interesting because it's asking you to tell about a time when. They're going to use that particular scenario a lot. They're wanting to ask you, tell me about a time that you did X, Y, and Z. How did you feel? How did you get through it? And what did you learn from it? So that you can open-endedly explain an experience, because past experience will usually direct future experiences. So they are going to really ask you for a lot of scenarios and a lot of experiences. All right, and here's another question. What do you see as your role in actively promoting the reunification between children and their primary families or the biological families? So, did you ever think about that? What is your role in the reunification process? Okay. Your role should be to support the reunification process if you're doing foster care. If you're here only for adoption, then it should be over before they get to you. The reunification should be not a goal anymore before they come to your house. All right, the second goal is motivation to foster adopt. Why are you wanting to do this? There's some sample questions. With whom did you first share your decision to foster or adopt? Why did you pick that person? And what was his or her response? So they're wanting you to talk and explain, why are you excited about this? Why are you happy about it? What influences have you had on the decision to foster or adopt? What are the things that you worry about parenting a child not born to you? Have you thought about those things? What do you worry about? Tell me about a time that you entered into something with expectations and they weren't met. So these are really deep thinking questions. All right, another one, a motivation, a huge motivation sometimes is infertility. So you may have to talk about that and discuss that with a social worker. How have you dealt with your issues of infertility? What are you doing now? Because one of the worst things that can happen is you sign up to foster and adopt and you're all excited. You're ready to do it. You get a call. You get a child even. And then you get pregnant, and then you have a decision to make, or maybe they're in foster care and they have to go back, and it's an emotional roller coaster anyway. And on top of that, you have all the other issues that you're dealing with, a pregnancy perhaps, or loss, different things. So, just be aware. 3, personal and emotional security. So this is an area of your own personal emotional security that they're going to be checking. They're going to ask questions regarding, have you ever worked toward a goal for a long time? So they're talking and asking you about delayed gratification. How do you manage obstacles? Tell me about a time when you felt personally rejected. How did you respond? What was the outcome? So a lot of scenarios. Tell me about a time when and the best advice I can give you is just be honest and just, explain. I don't know, I need more time to think about that one. Maybe you can ask me again at the next session. I can't remember a time when I did that, but maybe if you ask me again the next time we meet, I'll have an answer for you. Tell me how conflict is managed in your family. That's an interesting one because there'll be some conflict adding new people to your house that stay and stay and stay and don't go anywhere. All right, so that was number 3. Number 4 is stability and quality of interpersonal relationships. So they might ask you some questions like, tell me about your relational history. How did you meet your spouse? And how long have you been together? What drew you to each other? And what has life been like so far? Are there areas in which you strongly disagree? And how do you manage disputes? So they're going to dig kind of deep into your marriage because the last thing they want is for them to bring a child to your house or children to your house, and then all you do is fight, and there's conflict and unresolved conflict, and it creates tension, and then the child didn't leave to come to your house and have even more trauma and emotional insecurity and instability. And so they really want you to be stable and discuss conflict and have a plan for managing conflict in the house. All right, how do you find support when you need it? There will be another relationship question. How do you find support? And describe how you have defended or protected others in the past from negative or unfair comments. So it doesn't mean they'll ask you all of these. And plus, once you answer one question, it may lead them to find another question to ask, or they may need not ask certain questions because you've already answered them when you answered previous ones. All right, next is coping skills and history of stress management. So, how do you deal with your stress? Sample questions for those could be, when you're having a rough time, what resources do you call on to cope? So, I have a friend I can call when I have a rough time. I have several friends actually that I can call depending on the area of my life that's in turmoil at the time, perhaps. How do you know when you're getting stressed out? And what are the physical, emotional, and social and cognitive cues? What are situations likely to trigger stress for you? What encounters have you had in caring for children who have experienced trauma? So have you had any experiences so far? What have they been like? Tell me about a time when. you dealt with this. In the last 5 years, what changes have you experienced personally or as a family? And how did you navigate through those? So these are kind of questions like, you could ask and answer individually or as a couple. All right, the next one is a level of openness in family relationships. A sample question would be, who do you include in your family? During a stressful situation, who helps you? Can you give me an example? Tell me about a time when you sought outside help. You had a stressful week or two. Did you ever talk to the pastor's wife on the way out the door at church? Did you ever call a friend and say, you had a teenage daughter at one time. Did you ever have to go through this, or did you ever deal with this situation? That's outside of the home. So what resources do you have? What people in your life do you have? What experience have you had caring for, relating to a child who is not biologically related to you? So have you ever babysat? Do your children have friends that have come over? Do you do VBS at school, at church? Do you do anything with the school system? Do you volunteer in the classroom? In your family, how have you handled differing viewpoints around personal values, religion, politics, or lifestyle? So this means like in your extended family, when you have conflict with them, perhaps at Thanksgiving or Christmas, and you've had conflicts, how have you handled that? Parenting skills and abilities. What do you enjoy most about parenting? What do you enjoy least about parenting? How does parenting fit into your day-to-day life? And how might it interfere with other activities you also enjoy doing? Because remember, if you have 2 children and you get 2 more children, it's going to be even more difficult to find a babysitter, more difficult to get away, because, leaving 4 children with one person, your spouse, is a lot more difficult than leaving 2 children with your spouse. So you're going to have to cut down on some of the extra activities that maybe you used to enjoy or used to do. When you're finding babysitters, it's very difficult to find a babysitter for 2 children. Sometimes it's affordable. How about trying to find an affordable babysitter for 4 children? No, it's difficult. It's very difficult. What you can do is trade with another foster family or another large family, and you say, once a month I'll take the kids, my husband and I will take your kids for you while you have an evening out, and vice versa. So that's how you can overcome that issue. Tell me about your children. How are they alike? How are they different? Do you parent them differently? Why or why not? And how do you parent them differently? All right. Have you ever had full-time responsibility for a child who had emotional or behavioral problems? Describe that experience. What is your understanding about brain development in children and adolescents? I'm pretty sure they may not ask you this. I don't know how deep they want to get, or professional they want to get. But you never know. They may ask that. How do you define normalcy? Normalcy. How do you define that? That would be different for everyone who answers the question. So normalcy. All right, next is the ability to empathize with others. Very important with foster care. How can you tell when people in your family are upset? How can you tell when someone else is upset, or even at your workplace? How do you know? Why do you think parents maltreat their children? Why do you think they do that? And do you think those parents feel badly about it? How do you think they feel when they treated their children badly? How do you think children feel about their abusive parents or neglectful parents? Tell me about a time when someone understood how you were feeling. And have you ever been able to provide that kind of support to someone else? And how did you help? The next one is understanding of entitlement issues. Have you ever cared for someone else's child? Were you able to parent the child as you would your own? Why or why not? That's very difficult in this day and age to be around someone else's child and try and say anything to them because, the parent would get very upset with you. However, if we're at the park and you are doing something or your child is doing something wrong, I might say something to the child, or I might say, where's your parent? Do they know you're doing that? Or something like that. But to try to parent someone else's child is very difficult. How do you plan to claim this child as a part of your family? Describe a situation that required you to make a reasonable and prudent parent decision. So, give a decision that you had to make regarding maybe a friend was over, one of your children's friends was over, and you had to make a decision. They cut their finger, or they fell down and skinned their knee, and you had to make that, even the smallest little instinctual decision that you make that shows that you're a parent at heart, and you have that parent inkling that you know what to do, and you can do it. Tell me about a time when you needed to make a decision that potentially might have a favorable or an unfavorable outcome. It's very, very open-ended and could be anything. What process did you use in your decision making? Was it an independent decision, or did you rely on an outside assistance? I would say if you have any questions at all, if you have any doubts at all, you would always call the social worker or the supervisor or the child social worker or your home finder and verify that your decision is the right decision. All right. So that was entitlement. And then they might ask you some more questions like, how are you going to make this child feel welcome into your home? And this is where they're going to look and make sure you have space for the child, you have adequate bedding for the child, those kinds of things. Do you have toys already for the child when they get there? Those kinds of things. How are you going to make them feel at home at your house? All right. Number 10, ability and willingness to take a hands-on parenting approach. So some sample questions for that would be, tell me about a time you had to give a consequence to a child. What was it? What was the outcome? How did you feel about it? How do you determine which methods of discipline are age-appropriate and child-specific? So they do want you to be age-appropriate and child-specific. So, for example, timeouts are 1 minute per age. So if they're 2 years old, the timeout cannot be any longer than 2 minutes. If they're 5 years old, 5 minutes. And then, so that would be age-specific. And child-specific would be maybe even timeout doesn't help, but time on your lap may help. So you would say, okay, you're going to spend 5 minutes with me. And so you sit the child either right beside you or on your lap, or, you have to be specific with the child. What's best for that specific child? Every child's not the same, so a timeout is not going to work the same way for every child, for sure. What resources have you taken advantage of to help you build your parenting skills? Well, there are a million books, and if I were you, I would go ahead and start reading them right now. Because once you get the child in your home, reading is considered a luxury. So I would get some books, like a probably link to some, but if you just search Amazon, like if you search fostering, foster care system, foster to adopt, anything like that, and the whole brain child is supposed to be pretty good. Any of those kinds of books would help, or just general parenting books also. How much direction or supervision should parents offer children? And at what point do you think it is too much? So those were very opinionated. So it's just your style. It's your parenting style. And I think that for foster children, more supervision is always better, just because you're very scrutinized. When something goes wrong, they get a bruise, you are scrutinized. So you need to know exactly what happened, who did what, who looked where, who went where, I called when, to whom, all this stuff. You need to know all the answers, and you need to write it down, and so you have documentation about everything. All right, the next one is ability to make and honor commitments. Sample questions for that would be, tell me about a time you wanted to quit something that became very hard for you. What did you do, and what was the outcome? Because they certainly don't want you to make a commitment to the child and then have to turn around and say, can't do it. Is there anything someone could do to you that you would consider unforgivable? A behavior that would end the relationship? So you would need to be honest about that. And describe something to which you have made a lifelong commitment. And was it very hard? Well, if you're married, it should be marriage. Made a lifelong commitment to that. Also, when you birth a child, you made a lifelong commitment to that. Even before you birth the child, you made a lifelong commitment to bear the child. Do you ever want to give up? Well, you could say, of course, you feel like giving up. You feel like it, but you don't make the decision to do it. So your feelings don't dictate what your actions or what you do. Your feelings don't dictate it. Even though you may feel like giving up on your regular child, you don't. Even though you may feel like giving up on your marriage, you don't. You make the commitment, you keep the commitment. And then the last one is the religious affiliations and spiritual beliefs. So some sample questions for that would be, tell me about your spiritual or religious viewpoints and practices. Are you currently affiliated with any particular religious or spiritual groups? And what is that group? How often do you congregate? What do you turn to for guidance with religious or spiritual matters? And what coping strategies do you find most beneficial? What rules or values regarding religion did your family of origin have for children? So when you grew up, what was your religion like? What areas of life do you suspect religion might affect? Give examples. How do you respond to religious or spiritual viewpoints that are not like your own value system? And how have you managed differences with others concerning standards of morality, ethics, and beliefs? So those are some things that you can think of beforehand, and it gives you an idea of what type. I'm not saying these will be the type of questions or the exact questions, but these will give you an example of the open-endedness that the questions will be like or that will mimic. Please like and subscribe to this video series, the foster care series. Comment below if you have any questions that you were asked in your interview. So if you just went through your Homestudy interview and you were asked some crazy question, put it down in the comments, and then we can all have more information on the particular study, and then maybe put what state you're in, and that would be interesting to know. Maybe certain states are asking different questions. So like I said, like and subscribe and comment and share with anybody that you think may be interested. Till next time, thank you for watching to the end. Bye.